Hey guys, so this is me, Wyatt. Anyway, this is gonna be a driving vlog. I'm not gonna look at the camera all the time because I'm driving, so if I look away from the camera and it bothers you, I'm sorry, but safety first. Anyway, so I figured I'm gonna make this video just because I want to talk about my testimony through God, or with Christ, my testimony with Christ, and being a Christian, and kind of my relationship with heavy music in relation to that. And I am going to post this in the Reformed Mosh Pit Facebook group, but anyone can watch this if they want, and I might post on my regular Facebook or YouTube. I haven't decided yet. But anyway, so how did I become a Christian? How did I get into heavy music? How did it all how is it related to me and my life? How did it all happen? Well, to start off with my journey, I can't remember a time when I wasn't going to church and I wasn't listening to music. That's because of my parents. My parents raised me in a Christian home, and they are Christians, and we've gone to church forever, just forever. We went to a Baptist church for a little bit at where we live, and then we went to Two Rivers Church of the Nazarene, and now we go to Farewell Avenue Christian Church. Now more on these in a bit, but also ever since I was a little kid, I've always listened to music, and that was partially because of my dad, but mostly because of my mom. My dad is a bit of a redneck, and he likes country and southern rock and some classic rock too. But my mom was the really musical person. She would always play classic rock music that she loved and that she grew up with. Sorry, we just slid a little bit. It's okay. We're fine though. And music from bands like Led Zeppelin. Sorry, I had to take a drink. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, The Who, Jimi Hendrix, Guns N' Roses, AC/DC. All these great classic rock bands that weren't. Some you could argue are metal. Like I think AC/DC and Guns N' Roses kind of ride that line a little bit. But I think but a lot of it was classic rock that was just like good rock and roll music that my mom listened to. And so my mom was really my first gateway into music. And then even for a little while, she was really into country music. Like I remember coming downstairs from my room and watching CMT. And if people don't know what CMT is, it's country music television. It's basically MTV for country music. And we went and saw Montgomery Gentry, who is still a great country group, in concert when they came to my town. It was a great show. It was really cool. And we listened to them and Gretchen Wilson and Big and Rich, and I remember all these country artists. And then my dad showed me Charlie Daniels and of course Johnny Cash and everything. So we listened to a lot of different stuff. But really, what the first bug that bit me as far as heavy music goes was I remember my dad is a nurse, but he was a nurse at this nursing home called the Denali Center, and it's a great place. I remember my great grandma was there for a while, and I remember visiting with her. And anyway, my dad was a nurse, and he helped a lot of people, and took care of a lot of people. And I forgot this guy's name, but I remember one guy he was looking after. I think it was a guy he was looking after. This guy had a lot of like rock and CDs and albums and everything. And I remember my dad and this guy played Deep Purple Smoke on the Water for me. And I remember hearing that riff, and I remember like thinking how kind of heavy it was. and it may not be that heavy by today's standards. I mean, even back when I was a kid, I'm still relatively young. It was, Deep Purple had been around since the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. So, and this was maybe in the early 2000s. So, it's even by that standards, it wasn't probably that heavy. But that's okay, because when I was a kid, I never heard anything like that. And then I remember later time in my life, when I was around 10 or 11 years old, I had a friend, an older friend, who we would play video games together. And I remember he was way into skateboarding and Tony Hawk video games. And I remember playing one of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games. And he wanted to show me the intro video, because there was a video that would play at the beginning of like guys skateboarding. And there was a song playing at the beginning, and he wanted to show me the song, and it was TNT by AC/DC, and that was like, whoa, that was really cool. And then I remember the same friend showed me the song Dirty Deeds, Thunder and Cheap by AC/DC. And so that really kind of got the ball rolling for me. Is really, I was getting into heavy rock music with AC/DC, and they were really my first band that I really liked. And then, of course, I got into Kiss for a while. They were my favorite band for a while. And then, of course, some of my mom's music, like Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith and all of that. And so I was really into hard rock music. But then I remember playing with my brother Guitar Hero 3. And Guitar Hero was really, and Rock Band, the games Rock Band were really a great thing for my generation, because I'm too young to have grown up with like real MTV. And so I didn't really have that. But I did have Guitar Hero and Rock Band, where I was learning about all this different rock and metal music through video games, because I didn't grow up with a lot of music videos other than like looking them up on the internet, but there wasn't a thing I regularly watched, so where I could look at that. But I did play guitar. We were into video games, and we played a lot of these classic bands with great songs, and that's how I discovered Metallica and Iron Maiden, who are still two of my favorite bands today. And I remember the song was One by Metallica and The Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden, and that really got me into heavy metal. And I remember asking my mom, I was like, hey, do you know about Metallica? Because I had heard about them before, but I never listened to them. And my mom said, yeah, they were around when I was young, but she never really got into them. That's what she said. And so I just, researched, and I went to the CD store, and I asked the guy at the CD place, I asked him, like, hey, which one should I get? He's like, probably Red the Lightning. And so that's what I started with. And I discovered the Black Album and Master of Puppets and all these great albums. And then Iron Maiden as well. And I actually remember there's a funny thing. I remember before I knew how to put music on my iPod, I asked my mom to put my Iron Maiden CD. It was like a compilation on my iPod, and my mom was reading the lyrics as she was doing it, and she thought they were satanic, even though they aren't, and their drummer's actually a Christian. But that was actually kind of funny. And so, like, about around this time, I also started going to this youth group from school. This youth group after school at a local church called Two Rivers Church of Nazarene. And there was this youth group called God Squad, and it was a lot of fun. I remember the pastor there, who I still keep in touch with once in a while, was so fun, and he taught us lessons about the Lord and all this great stuff, and he would play fun games, and he would tell us funny stories, and I remember it really made me want to be a Christian. So I told my parents when I got home after that first day at God Squad, I told them, hey, we got to go to this church, and we started going. And then I remember Easter Sunday when I was 12 years old, I got saved, because I remember we were taking communion, and everybody else was taking communion, and I wanted to be a part of it, and I didn't understand why I couldn't do it. And so then after the service was over, I told the pastor, and I told my dad, and my dad and the pastor kind of took me into a separate room and explained to me what communion meant, and that you have to be saved by Jesus, you have to be a Christian to partake in communion. And so that right there was the day I got saved, and my first communion. And so since then I've been a Christian, and so like I obviously I started being Christian. But then I started getting into heavier and heavier music, and I remember I would listen to bands that never really that never really spoke against Christ, that weren't satanic or anti-Christian. And in fact, I remember hearing about. I was always afraid of like bands like Slayer and Venom, let alone all the Norwegian black metal bands, and that you hear about that burned down churches and did all that stuff. I would hear these stories and I'd be like, oh, this is frightening, and I was afraid to even indulge in it. But then that kind of changed when I was. I remember I would go online on the internet. And I would look up heavy metal lists of like the best or like top whatever heavy metal albums. I remember there was this one list that had like 40 albums, and it was like classic hard rock and heavy metal. And a bunch of them were bands I already kind of knew about. There's a couple I didn't know, but there was two bands that stuck out to me that really got me into heavier music, for better or for worse, and that was Slayer and Venom. And before that, I had always been afraid of like listening to these bands because they had satanic imagery and they had anti-Christian lyrics, but I decided that I would give them a try, and I started listening to them, and I enjoyed it for a while. I really did. I was really into these bands, and that kind of made me check out like death metal and grindcore and doom metal and black metal and all this different stuff. And so I started getting into kind of more brutal, even satanic music, and I'm not proud of it now, but that's how it happened. I've done things I've regretted. Like I've slept around with people before I was married, and I'm not proud of that. I've tried marijuana before, and I'm not proud of that. I used to smoke. I've done things I'm not proud of that I don't do anymore. And so it was hard for me, and I'm not saying that the music helped influence me, but it was certainly the darker satanic music, but it was certainly a part of it. It was part of this sort of self-destructive lifestyle I was leading. But then this year, or actually not even this year, but I really got out of that whole thing. I stopped sleeping around. I stopped smoking. I stopped doing all that, and I stopped using marijuana, even though I've only used it like twice or 3 times. And I realized, like, I was like, the next person I'm going to be in a relationship with, I'm going to marry, and that's when I met my wife, and we started dating, and she helped make me a better man, and she helped make me want to be a better Christian and not deny God anymore, and help not deny what He's done for me. And then I remember my wife was pregnant, and this happened just this past year, and I had an encounter with someone who I was at work. I was a security guard. I'm not anymore, but I was. And I was guarding my post, and someone walked up to me and gave me. It was a hot day. It was a really hot day, and sorry, my voice is getting dry. But it was a hot day, and this woman comes up to me and she gives me a bottle of water, and I was like, thank you, because I had run out of water at that moment. Even though I told my boss and he was already on his way to give me some. But and so this woman asked me if I have a faith or a religion or a belief, and I said, yeah, I'm a Christian. And she asked if it would be all right to pray with me, and I said, absolutely. She asked me if there was anything going on in my life that I needed help with, and I said, yeah, well, my wife and I are having a baby, and there's a lot going on financially, like that we're having trouble with, and just at that time I was having trouble with money and keeping gas in the car and things like that. And this woman prays with me, and she proceeds to give me $40 in cash after we pray. And at first I started to be like, I can't really take that. And she kind of insisted, and I was like, okay, thank you. And I thanked her, and I couldn't believe it. And I had introduced myself. I said my name's Wyatt, because she asked me my name. And then a few minutes after that, maybe half an hour after that, there was a guy who came up to me. He's like, "You're Wyatt, right?" I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "How do you know my name?" And he was like, "Well, my daughter told me your name." And he said, like, "Oh yeah, really?" I'm like, "Who's your daughter?" And she's like, "Oh, she was just here a few minutes ago. She talked to you." I was like, "Oh yeah." And then he asked to pray with me, and I said, "Yeah," and we prayed. And then he left, and that was it. And I just thought about, like, how random it was that there is these people who didn't know that I was a Christian until I told them. They didn't know I was into heavy metal music. They didn't know my past. They didn't know I had tattoos. They didn't know I used to smoke. They didn't know that I slept around. They didn't know any of that. They didn't know my sins. But they helped me. You know, they came out of the blue and they helped me. And just by pure coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidence. I believe everything happens for a reason. I believe God causes everything to happen for a reason. And so this made me kind of reflect on my life a little bit, this encounter, where I started thinking, like, what can I do to pay it back? Like, and I know, like, good works don't necessarily get you into heaven, but believing Christ does and following Christ does. But it wasn't about that. It was me wanting to. It was like me wanting to, like, to do the right thing, to pay it back, to pay it forward to other people and to God, if that makes sense. And I realized that there was this part of my life where I'd given up a lot of stuff I used to do that was wrong, you know. Also, I'm not saying that tattoos are inherently wrong, by the way, if you're taking that out of context. I don't think they're wrong inherently, but that's another debate for another day. Anyway, I was just thinking about that, and I realized that there was this one part of my life where I would say I was a Christian, and I would go to church, and I would try to be a good person through Christ. But there was still this one part of my life where I would listen to music that defied my Lord and Savior. Now, so this caused me to realize that I can't listen to any satanic bands anymore, any anti-Christian bands anymore. And I mean directly satanic or anti-Christian bands. And so I gave up the shirts of these specific bands, and I had a vest with patches. I have a vest with patches on. I got rid of the patches, and I got rid of the music. Not of every band I listened to, but the bands that had this sort of agenda against Jesus. And you know, and so that's really where I'm at now. And now I'm part of, I've been trying to go to church regularly, a lot more, and I've been praying a lot, and I'm part of this Facebook group called the Reformed Mosh Pit, which is basically a Christian group on Facebook for fans of heavy music, whether it's death metal, black metal, grindcore, thrash metal, hardcore punk, classic heavy metal, doom metal, whatever. Yeah, it's for everyone. Metalcore, whatever. It's for everyone who's into heavy music and is a Christian. And it's kind of what I've been waiting for. My whole life as a Christian, I've been waiting for something like this. And yeah, I still listen to secular death metal. I still listen to I'm wearing a Cannibal Corpse shirt right now. I still listen to secular grindcore and thrash metal, and I've kind of been considering listening to some secular black metal, but I will not listen to any bands that openly defy Jesus. And I still listen to bands that tackle some dark subjects, absolutely, some even violent subjects. But to me, it doesn't cause me to stumble because it's not defying Jesus, and that's where I'm at now. And I'm not I'm not saying everyone has to do this, and I'm sure there's some people who would disagree with me and be like, well, you still listen to Cannibal Corpse, and they're really violent, and they sing about gore mutilation, and that's not very Christian, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm like, well, then stop listening to Led Zeppelin, because all they sing about sex and Vikings. So, I'm just saying, okay? So, I'm not saying, look, it's all about your own judgment. There are people in the Reformed mosh pit who listen to only Christian heavy music. There are people who only listen to secular heavy music, but avoid the satanic bands, like me. And then there's the people who listen to it all. There are Christians, or people who claim to be Christians in the Reformed mosh pit who still listen to satanic black metal, still listen to Slayer, still listen to satanic death metal. And really, that's their prerogative. I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to tell them what to do. I'm going to tell them what I think. But this is all it is. This is my testimony. This is how I became a Christian. This is how I became a metalhead. This is how my life has changed for the better over the course of it. And I'm still not done. I'm still really young. And I'm still trying to raise my daughter and hopefully my future kids in a Christian environment. But I also want to teach them not to judge people based on how they look, whether or not they have tattoos, whether or not they have long hair or wear black clothes. You know? So really, that's it, and I just want to share this story with you. Anyway, stay brutal, and God bless. Bye.